Hey, RCA Church family and others, I hope you're having a great week so far this week. You know, it's hard to believe that February is already here, but it is, and we're having a great time here at RCA Church. I started a brand new series this past week entitled, If My People Will. And all month long, we're going to be looking at 2 Chronicles 7:14 and looking at those action verbs that are in that and seeing what we can learn from it. This past week, I talked about if my people will humble themselves, and I talked all about humility. Have you ever stopped to think about humility? It's kind of a difficult thing, to describe, but you know it when you see it. And what we did is we went to the Bible and we pulled some things to understand better what humility is and how we can live a life of humility like Christ did. The first thing we looked at was that humility is surrender. Humility says to God, Lord, you know best. You think about Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane and how he prayed, Lord, if there's any way we can do this another way, Father, if there's any way we can, this cup can pass from me, let's do this another way. Nevertheless, Father, not my will, but your will be done. That's a true picture of humility, is submitting to the Lord, understanding that your plans and your thoughts aren't the highest, submitting those plans to God. When you do that, when you understand that you're dependent on God, then other people can begin to depend on you. And that's the second thing, is that humility is serving others. There's an incredible passage in Philippians chapter 2. It talks about how Jesus emptied himself of the glories of heaven, and he came and he submitted himself to being formed into the shape of a man and living an earthly life here, and then ultimately submitting himself to the cross. And I'm so glad that he did. But we see from that submitting is serving others, and you're never more like Jesus than when you serve someone else. It's powerful truths, and serving others basically says, you know what, I'm not the most important person in the room, and that's okay. Think about that. Every room that you walk in, you're never the most important person. You might be in a room by yourself. God's there with you. You're never the most important person in the room. And then finally, we talked about how submitting to the Lord, all of that leads to being humble, humility. All of that finally wraps up in the fact that we just need to be honest with ourselves. The Word says not to think more highly of ourselves than we ought. We need to be honest with our talents and abilities and who God's created us and that special thumbprint He's put on our life, and not try to be somebody or something that we're not, but just try to be the best version of ourselves that we can be. Here's what I know, church, that when we walk in true biblical humility, that's one of the first steps. Go back to 2 Chronicles 7:14. If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves. There's some powerful things that come after that, but it all begins with humility. And I challenge you, as you walk out the rest of this week, think about your life. Think about it in terms of these things that I mentioned today. Try to gauge your level of humility and ask the Holy Spirit to help you to work on that this week. Here's what I know. Humility can be a challenging test and trial. I shared a little bit about that in the message on Sunday, but I know it's also very, very rewarding. So I challenge you and encourage you with that. We hope to see you tonight at 7 p.m. for the best night of the week. We've always got something going on great here at RCA Church. We'll see you soon.